Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Facade. Marcus Richmond stood in the doorway of his modest two-bedroom apartment, watching his wife, Chelsea Paige Richmond, fuss over their twin children, Emma and Jake, both 14. To any observer, they looked like a struggling middle-class family. Marcus worked as a night security guard at a downtown office building, bringing home barely enough to keep them afloat. Chelsea worked part-time at a local diner, always complaining about the tips and the smell of grease that clung to her uniform. What Chelsea didn't know, what nobody knew, was that Marcus Richmond was a ghost. For 15 years, Marcus had operated under deep cover as part of an elite private military contractor group called Phantom Solutions. His real name wasn't even Marcus Richmond. His missions had taken him to places that didn't exist on any map, handling problems for clients whose names appeared on Forbes lists and government payrolls. The modest apartment, the security guard job, even his marriage to Chelsea, it had all been part of his cover identity, a way to blend into civilian life between assignments. But 3 years ago, everything changed. Marcus had fallen in love with the role he was playing. He'd grown attached to Chelsea, to the kids he'd helped raise, to the simple life he'd built as a cover story. When Phantom Solutions offered him an extraction, a chance to return to his real life with a new identity and enough money to disappear forever, Marcus had refused. He'd chosen them. He'd chosen this life. "Dad, can you help me with my math homework?" Emma asked, her voice pulling Marcus from his thoughts. "Sure, sweetheart," Marcus replied, settling into the worn couch beside her. As he helped her work through algebra problems, he noticed Chelsea glancing at her phone frequently, typing quick messages with a secretive smile. For the past month, she'd been different. Distant. She'd started wearing makeup to her diner shifts and coming home with stories about how slow the night had been, despite her increasingly cheerful mood. Marcus's training had taught him to notice patterns, to read people, to detect deception. Chelsea was having an affair. The old Marcus, the operator, would have gathered evidence, would have planned response. But this Marcus, the one who'd chosen love over duty, pushed the suspicions aside. Maybe she was just planning a surprise for their anniversary next month. Maybe he was reading too much into innocent behavior. "There," Emma said, finishing the last problem. "Thanks, Dad. Anytime, princess." Marcus kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "You're getting too smart for your old man." Jake looked up from his video game. "Dad, are we poor?" The question hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. "Why would you ask that, son?" "Some kids at school were talking about how their parents bought them new phones and stuff. We never have money for things like that." Chelsea's head snapped up from her phone. "Jake, that's not appropriate dinner conversation." "It's okay," Marcus said gently. "Jake, we have everything we need. A roof over our heads, food on the table, and each other. That's what matters." But even as he said the words, Marcus could see the doubt in his son's eyes. At 14, Jake was beginning to understand social hierarchies, to notice the differences between his family's circumstances and those of his classmates. Later that night, as Chelsea took an unusually long shower, Marcus noticed her phone buzzing on the nightstand. The message preview showed only a contact name, Dan B. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Hotel is booked. Told the wife I'm working late again." Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. Not heartbreak. He'd experienced enough betrayal in his former life to build walls around his emotions. But a familiar, calculating anger. The kind that had made him one of Phantom Solutions' most effective operators. He memorized the number, then laid back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. When Chelsea emerged from the bathroom, toweling her hair, she was humming softly. "You seem happy," Marcus observed. "Just had a good day at work." Tips were better than usual. The lie rolled off her tongue so easily. "That's great, honey." Marcus pulled her close, kissing her cheek. "I love you." "Love you too," she replied, but her voice carried none of the warmth it once had. As Chelsea drifted off to sleep beside him, Marcus began planning. But not the kind of plan the old Marcus would have made. This time, he would try to save his marriage, to fight for the life he'd chosen. He would confront the other man, maybe appeal to Chelsea's better nature. He still believed in the possibility of redemption. That belief would die in a hospital bed 3 days later. Chapter 2. The Revelation. The rain was coming down in sheets as Marcus walked home from his security shift at 6 a.m. He'd pulled a double to cover for a sick coworker, and exhaustion weighed heavy on his shoulders. The morning traffic was just beginning to pick up as he crossed the intersection near their apartment complex. He never saw the truck coming. The impact sent Marcus flying 15 feet, his body skidding across the wet asphalt before coming to rest against a parked car. The driver, a terrified college kid, immediately called 911, stammering apologies into his phone as Marcus lay motionless in the street. But Marcus wasn't unconscious. The impact had been brutal. He could feel at least 3 broken ribs, a possible concussion, and his left leg was definitely broken. But his training had taught him to control his breathing, to remain still when injured, to assess the situation before revealing his condition. Years of operations in hostile territory had ingrained these responses deep into his muscle memory. So when the paramedics arrived and found him unresponsive, when they loaded him onto a stretcher and rushed him to City General Hospital, Marcus let them believe he was unconscious. Something in his operator's instincts told him to stay quiet, to observe. The emergency room was chaos. Marcus was wheeled into Trauma Bay 3, where nurses began cutting away his clothes and hooking him up to monitors. Through barely cracked eyelids, he watched them work, professional and efficient. BP is stabilizing, one nurse reported. Possible internal bleeding, definitely some broken bones. He's lucky to be alive. That's when Marcus heard familiar voices in the hallway outside the trauma bay. Absolutely unconscious, Mrs. Richmond. The impact was severe. We're still running tests, but he's not responding to stimuli. How long before we know if he'll wake up? Chelsea's voice, but with an edge Marcus had never heard before. These things are unpredictable. Could be hours, could be days. Head trauma is always complicated. Through the gap in the curtain, Marcus could see Chelsea standing with the twins. She was holding Emma's hand, but her expression wasn't one of a worried wife. She looked calculating. Kids, why don't you go get something from the vending machines? Chelsea handed them some bills. Take your time. Once Emma and Jake were gone, Chelsea's entire demeanor shifted. She pulled out her phone and made a call. Dan? Yeah, it's me. No, he's unconscious. The doctors don't know when he'll wake up. A pause. What do you mean? What do I mean? This is it. This is our chance. Marcus felt ice water flow through his veins. I don't know how long we have, but the doctor said it could be days. Maybe longer. We can clean out the apartment tonight. Take everything. Another pause. Yes, the kids too. They'll be better off anyway. The conversation continued for another few minutes, but Marcus had heard enough. Chelsea was planning to abandon him, thinking he might never wake up. But it got worse. When the twins returned, Chelsea had composed herself back into the role of the concerned wife. But her next words shattered any remaining illusions Marcus had about his family. Listen carefully, she told Emma and Jake in a low voice. Your father, he's not the man we thought he was. What do you mean, Mom? Emma asked, confused. He's a broke, useless dreamer. Always talking about how things would get better, but look where we are. Look at this place. Chelsea gestured around the hospital. This is where his big dreams got him. Mom, that's mean? Jake protested. Dad's hurt. Your dad is a loser, Jake. And now we can finally start a new life with your second dad. Chelsea's voice was cold, matter of fact. Dan has been taking care of us for months. He has money, a real job, a nice house. We can have everything we deserve. Marcus's heart shattered as he watched his children's faces. Emma started crying softly, while Jake just stared at his mother in shock. But what about Dad? Emma whispered. Your dad made his choices. We're making ours. Chelsea checked her phone. Dan's already started moving our important things to his place. Tonight, when visiting hours are over, we're going to pack up the rest and leave. We're just going to leave him here. Jake's voice cracked. He'll be fine. The hospital will take care of him. And if he wakes up, Chelsea shrugged. Well, maybe he'll finally understand that some people are meant for better things. The next hour was torture for Marcus. He watched through slitted eyes as Chelsea performed for the nurses, playing the worried wife while texting constantly with her lover. The twins sat in uncomfortable silence, processing their mother's brutal revelations. When visiting hours ended, they left. Chelsea's final words to the nurse were, "Please call if there's any change. We'll be at home." But Marcus knew they wouldn't be at home. They would be packing up his life, stealing what little money they had in their joint account, and moving in with Dan Bass, a man whose name Marcus had memorized from Chelsea's phone 3 nights ago. As the hospital settled into its evening quiet, Marcus carefully opened his eyes fully for the first time. A young nurse, Miriam Goodwin, according to her name tag, was checking his monitors. "How long have you been awake?" she asked softly. Marcus tried to speak, found his throat dry. "Water." Miriam quickly got him some iced chips. "I saw you move your eyes during visiting hours. How much did you hear?" "Everything." The word came out as a croak. Miriam's face was sympathetic but professional. "I'm sorry. I couldn't help but overhear some of what your wife said. That was brutal," Marcus finished. "She's right about one thing, though. I'm not the man they think I am." "What do you mean?" Marcus looked at the nurse, really looked at her. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with kind eyes and a genuine concern that seemed rare these days. On her arm was a small tattoo, a phoenix rising from flames. "You military?" Marcus asked. Miriam nodded. "Army medic. 2 tours in Afghanistan." "You?" Marcus pulled back the hospital gown to reveal his own tattoo, a skull wrapped in barbed wire with the letters PS underneath. It was the mark of Phantom Solutions, invisible to civilians but unmistakable to those in the know. Miriam's eyes widened. "Phantom Solutions? I thought you guys were a myth." "We were ghosts," Marcus said quietly. "I was a ghost, until I chose to become Marcus Richmond, security guard and family man. And now," Marcus stared at the ceiling, feeling the last vestiges of the man he'd tried to become crumble away. Now Marcus Richmond is dead. And ghosts don't forgive. Chapter 3, The Awakening. Miriam Goodwin had seen her share of broken men during her tours in Afghanistan, but there was something different about the patient in bed 3. When he'd shown her that tattoo, everything clicked into place. The way he'd remained perfectly still during the trauma assessment, the controlled breathing, the calculated way he'd observe his surroundings even while unconscious. "How bad are your injuries?" "Really?" she asked, checking to make sure they weren't being overheard. "Broken ribs, broken leg, concussion. Nothing that won't heal." Marcus tested his range of motion carefully. "I've had worse. You need to be here for at least a week. Maybe 2. "Perfect. That gives me time to plan." Something in his tone made Miriam uneasy. "Plan what?" Marcus looked at her with eyes that had gone completely cold. "My wife and her lover just stole my children, and what they think is everything I own. They're probably celebrating right now, thinking I'm some pathetic loser who'll never wake up to stop them. And you're not going to let that slide. I'm going to destroy them." The words were spoken without emotion, like he was discussing the weather. Completely, utterly, in ways they can't even imagine. Miriam had heard that tone before, from soldiers who'd been pushed past their breaking point. "What do you need from me?" "Information, for now." "And?" Marcus hesitated. "You said you were Army. What's your security clearance?" "Had secret clearance." "Why?" "Because in about 6 hours, this place is going to be crawling with people asking questions about me. My cover identity is about to be blown." Miriam frowned. "What do you mean?" Marcus pointed to his tattoo. "This isn't just any marking. It's linked to a biometric database. The moment the hospital ran my blood work and fingerprints for identification, it triggered alerts in systems most people don't know exist." As if summoned by his words, Miriam's supervisor appeared at the doorway. "Goodwin, we need to talk." She stepped outside, and Marcus could hear hushed, urgent conversation. When she returned, her face was pale. "The FBI is sending agents. Something about your identity being flagged in a federal database. They'll be here within the hour. Right on schedule." Marcus seemed completely unconcerned. "Here's what's going to happen. The agents will be from a task force that doesn't officially exist. They'll want to extract me, give me a new identity, relocate me somewhere safe. And you're going to refuse. I'm going to negotiate." The next hour passed quickly. Miriam had to maintain the pretense of normal patient care while Marcus prepared for what was coming. True to his prediction, two agents arrived, a woman in her 40s with steel gray hair and a younger man who looked like he'd stepped out of a recruitment poster. "Mr. Richmond," the woman said, "or would you prefer we use your real name?" "Marcus will do fine. And you are?" "Agent Dale Kenny, FBI. This is Agent Eric McMahon. We understand you've had an accident. Among other things." Marcus gestured to his broken leg. "I assume you're here about the biometric flag. Your cover identity was compromised the moment you entered the federal medical database. There are people looking for you, Mr. Richmond. People who don't have your best interests at heart. People from my former life. Among others. We're prepared to offer you full extraction, new identity, relocation, financial support. You just need to come with us." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I have a better offer." Agent Kenny raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening. I want back in. Full reinstatement to Phantom Solutions, access to resources, operational support." "That's impossible. You've been out of the game for 3 years. Your psychological profile has nothing to do with my operational capabilities." Marcus's voice hardened. "You came here because my identity was blown, but it wasn't blown by accident." The two agents exchanged glances. "Explain." "Someone ran my biometrics through the system deliberately. Someone who wanted you to find me, which means someone knows exactly who and where I am." Agent McMahon leaned forward. "You think this was targeted?" "I think my accident wasn't an accident at all." Marcus had been piecing it together since the agents arrived. "The timing is too convenient. The driver was a college kid, probably paid to be in exactly the right place at the right time. Someone wanted me out of commission, wanted my family to think I was helpless. Who would do that? Someone who knows what I'm capable of. Someone who wanted to neutralize me before making their move." Marcus met Agent Kenny's eyes. "I want to find out who, and I want resources to deal with them appropriately. Even if we could authorize that, you're in no condition for field work. I'll heal, and while I do, I can operate from here. All I need is access to the Phantom database and a secure communication channel." Agent Kenny was quiet for a long moment. "Why aren't you telling us?" Marcus smiled for the first time since the accident, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "My wife and her lover just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They think they're stealing from a security guard. They have no idea they just declared war on a ghost. And you want to haunt them. I want to erase them. Completely. Permanently. In ways that will serve as a warning to anyone else who might be stupid enough to cross me." The room was silent for several minutes. Finally, Agent Kenny nodded. "We'll need to discuss this with our superiors. But, unofficially, if what you're saying is true, if someone deliberately blew your cover, then Phantom Solutions has a security breach to investigate. And I'm the perfect person to investigate it. From a hospital bed." Marcus's smile widened. "You'd be surprised what a ghost can accomplish from the shadows." After the agents left, promising to return with an answer within 24 hours, Miriam returned to check on him. "You're really going to do this?" she said. It wasn't a question. They made it personal. They involved my children. And worst of all, Marcus's expression grew dark. "They underestimated me. What happens when they realize their mistake? By then, it'll be too late. Ghosts don't give warnings, Miriam. We just make people disappear." That night, as Marcus lay in his hospital bed planning his return to a world he'd tried to leave behind, his phone began ringing. The caller ID showed Chelsea's number. The first call came at 11 p.m., then another at 11:15. By midnight, his phone showed 23 missed calls and 15 voicemails. Marcus smiled in the darkness and turned off his phone without listening to a single message. The ghost was awake, and he was hungry. Chapter 4. The Resurrection. Agent Dale Kenny returned the next morning with a tablet computer and a face that revealed nothing. Marcus had been awake since 4 a.m., planning and thinking, his mind operating with the cold precision he'd thought he'd left behind forever. "Your reinstatement has been approved," Kenny said without preamble. "Provisional status, reporting directly to me. Your cover story remains intact. To everyone else, you're still Marcus Richmond, security guard. What changed their minds? We ran a background check on your wife's boyfriend, Dan Bass. Turns out he's been busy." Kenny activated the tablet. showing Marcus a series of photographs. Daniel Lawrence Bass, 34, works as an assistant manager at Pinnacle Construction. Divorced, one child he doesn't see. Gambling problem that puts him about $60,000 in debt to some very unpleasant people. Marcus studied the photos. Dan was average height, soft around the middle, with thinning hair and the look of a man who'd never been tested by real adversity. Not exactly criminal mastermind material. No, but he's desperate, and desperate people do stupid things. Like agreeing to help neutralize a Phantom Solutions operative in exchange for a clean slate with his creditors. The pieces clicked into place. Someone paid off his debts in exchange for information about me. We think so. The timing is too clean. Bass starts his affair with your wife exactly 6 months ago. The same time his debt mysteriously disappears. Your accident happens 3 days after your cover identity starts showing activity in federal databases. Someone's been watching me, testing my security protocols, and you were too busy playing house to notice. Kenny's tone was disapproving, but not entirely unsympathetic. Marcus absorbed this without defensiveness. It was true. He'd let his guard down, allowed emotion to cloud his operational judgment. It was a mistake he wouldn't make again. What do we know about who's pulling Bass's strings? Still working on that. But we have a lead. Bass received a cash payment of $75,000 2 weeks ago, deposited into a Cayman Islands account under a corporate shell. Untraceable. For now. But money leaves footprints, even when people try to hide it. We'll find the source. Marcus nodded, already thinking 3 steps ahead. I need to know everything about Bass. His routines, his weaknesses, his fears. I want a complete psychological profile. Already in progress. What else? I need to know where my family is staying. Not to contact them, he added quickly, seeing Kenny's expression. To monitor the situation. They're at Bass's house. 2-story colonial in Westfield Heights. Your wife cleared out your joint account. All $2,847 of it, and took most of your possessions, including your dog. Marcus felt a cold rage building. Max was an 8-year-old German Shepherd he'd rescued as a puppy. The dog had been one of the few constants in his cover life, and one of the things he'd genuinely grown to love. They took my dog, among other things. The children are enrolled in new schools starting Monday. Your wife has already filed paperwork to change their last names to Bass. She's moving fast. She thinks you're dying. Or dead. Kenny showed him another screen. Your phone has received 71 calls from her number in the last 18 hours. She's left 23 voicemails. Probably trying to cover her tracks. Create a record of the worried wife trying to reach her unconscious husband. That's our assessment too. Should we monitor her communications? Absolutely. But carefully. I don't want to spook her yet. Kenny made notes on the tablet. What's your operational objective? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring out the hospital window at the city beyond. When he spoke, his voice was utterly without warmth. Total destruction. I want Bass ruined. Financially, socially, psychologically. I want my wife to understand exactly what she threw away, and then I want to take everything she thinks she's gained. I want them both to know they destroyed their lives the moment they decided to betray me. And your children are old enough to have made their choice. They went along with abandoning their father for a better lifestyle. They'll live with the consequences. That's harsh. That's realistic. I try to be the loving father, the devoted husband. It got me a hospital bed and a knife in the back. Marcus met Kenny's eyes. I'm done being Marcus Richmond, family man. From now on, I'm exactly what I always was. A weapon. What do you need to get started? Access to Phantom's financial resources, a secure laptop, and a way to monitor the house in Westfield Heights without being detected. The surveillance can be arranged. How much financial access are we talking about? Enough to make some very expensive problems disappear, and enough to create some new ones for the right people. Kenny made more notes. Anything else? Yes. I need you to arrange for some flowers to be sent to Chelsea. From her loving, devoted husband who's fighting for his life in the hospital. That's unusually sentimental for an operation. Marcus smiled, and this time there was real malice in the expression. I want her to feel guilty. Guilty people make mistakes. And when she makes her first mistake, I'll be ready. After Kenny left, Marcus used his new secure laptop to begin building psychological profiles of his targets. Base was weak, driven by greed and fear. He could be manipulated through his ego and his desperation to appear successful. Chelsea was more complex. She'd shown a calculating ruthlessness that Marcus had never seen before, but also a fundamental selfishness that could be exploited. The key would be to turn them against each other. Make them paranoid. Make them suspicious. People who didn't trust each other made fatal errors in judgment. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "The flowers are beautiful. Thank you. I love you. See." Marcus deleted the message without responding. Let her wonder. Let her worry about why he wasn't answering. Let the guilt begin to eat at her. He opened a new file on his laptop and began typing. Operation Ghost Protocol. Phase 1. Psychological Warfare. Objective: isolate targets from support systems and establish doubt regarding their security and safety. Primary targets: Chelsea Paige Richmond, Daniel Base. Secondary targets: Emma Richmond, Jake Richmond, monitoring only, no direct action. Tertiary objectives: identify and neutralize unknown third party responsible for operational compromise. As he worked, Marcus felt the familiar cold focus settling over him. The part of him that had loved Chelsea, that had wanted to be a father to Emma and Jake, was being carefully sealed away. What remained was the operator, calculating, patient, and absolutely without mercy. They'd awaken a ghost. Now, they would learn what ghosts did to the living. Chapter 5. The Hunt Begins. 3 days after his resurrection as an operative, Marcus was transferred to a private room with enhanced security features. To any observer, he was simply a patient recovering from serious injuries. In reality, his room had become a command center. Agent Eric McMahon arrived that morning with surveillance reports and a grim expression. "We've been monitoring the house in Westfield Heights," he said, spreading photos across Marcus's hospital table. "Your family has settled in quickly." Too quickly. Marcus studied the images. Chelsea and the twins moving boxes, Base grilling in the backyard. All of them laughing and looking remarkably comfortable for people who'd supposedly just fled a tragic situation. How long did it take her to stop wearing her wedding ring? Marcus asked. 12 hours after she left the hospital. We have photos of her throwing it in a dumpster behind Base's office building. Marcus felt nothing. The emotional Marcus Richmond, who would have been devastated by that image, was gone, replaced by the operational mind that saw it simply as intelligence data. What about Base's financial situation? That's where it gets interesting. McMahon produced another set of documents. The $75,000 payment we traced? It wasn't the only one. Base has been receiving regular payments for the past 8 months. Small amounts, $500 to $1,000, deposited into various accounts. Payment for surveillance on me. That's our working theory. Someone's been building a file on Marcus Richmond for almost a year. Show me Base's psychological profile. McMahon handed over a thick folder. Marcus read through it quickly, his trained mind absorbing and categorizing the information. Daniel Base was a textbook example of middle-aged desperation. Divorced, financially struggling, watching younger colleagues advance while he stagnated. He had a history of gambling, minor fraud, and using women for financial support. He's a user, Marcus concluded. Classic narcissistic personality with sociopathic tendencies. He doesn't love Chelsea. He sees her as a convenient solution to his problems. And your wife is about to learn exactly what kind of man she's chosen over me. Marcus opened his laptop and began typing orders. Within hours, several things would happen simultaneously. Base's creditors, the dangerous ones he thought had been paid off, would receive anonymous tips about his new address and improved living situation. The IRS would receive an anonymous report about unreported income. His ex-wife would receive copies of photos showing him living with another woman and her children. But most importantly, Base would begin receiving gifts. "I want you to arrange for deliveries to the house," Marcus told McMahon. Expensive deliveries. Cases of wine, luxury food items, electronics. All paid for with untraceable cash. All with gift cards reading, "Thanks for a job well done." You want to make him paranoid. I want to make him terrified. Base is a small-time player who thinks he's hit the big leagues. When expensive gifts start showing up with cryptic messages, he's going to assume his mysterious benefactor is checking up on him. And when he gets paranoid, he'll start making mistakes, demanding answers from people who might not want to give them, asking questions that will expose the larger operation. While McMahon arranged the deliveries, Marcus focused on Chelsea. She was the more dangerous of the two, smarter, more calculating, more capable of long-term planning. But she had vulnerabilities. Her social media profiles revealed a woman obsessed with image and status. She'd already begun posting photos of her new life, careful not to include Base directly, but showing off the upgraded circumstances. New clothes, fancy restaurants, a lifestyle that was dramatically better than what she'd had with Marcus. Marcus began creating fake social media accounts, carefully building networks of mutual friends and local connections. Then he began commenting on Chelsea's posts, always supportive, always encouraging, but with subtle questions. Wow, things have really improved for you lately. How did you manage such a quick turnaround? Your husband must be doing so much better to afford all this. Is he out of the hospital yet? The kids look so happy in their new school. Was it hard for them to leave their father behind? Each comment was designed to make her followers ask questions, to plant seeds of doubt about her story. Marcus knew that Chelsea had been telling people her husband was still unconscious, that she was staying with a friend while she waited for him to recover. The cognitive dissonance between that story and her obvious improvement in circumstances would create pressure. By evening, Marcus had one more surprise arranged. A florist would deliver another bouquet to the house, but this time with a different message, to Chelsea and Dan, wishing you both exactly what you deserve. A concerned friend. That night, Marcus's secure phone rang. Agent Kinney's voice was tight with concern. We have a problem. Base received a visitor this afternoon. Someone who doesn't appear in any of our databases. Describe them. Male, approximately 40, well-dressed, drove a car with diplomatic plates. Our surveillance team couldn't get close enough for detailed photos. How long was he there? 20 minutes. Base looked shaken when he left. Marcus processed this information. Someone higher up the food chain was getting nervous about the operation. The anonymous gifts, the social media pressure, the mysterious flowers, his psychological warfare was having the intended effect. Increase surveillance. I want to know every person who goes in or out of that house. Marcus, Kinney's voice carried a warning. If there are diplomatic plates involved, this operation could have international implications. We might need to pull back. No. Marcus's voice was absolute. They made this personal when they targeted my family. I don't care who's pulling the strings. I'm going to cut them all. After ending the call, Marcus opened a new file on his laptop. The psychological pressure campaign was working, but it was time to escalate. Phase 2 would be more direct, more personal, and infinitely more dangerous. He began typing operational orders that would have terrified the Marcus Richmond who'd been lying in this hospital bed a week ago. But that man was dead. What remained was something much more dangerous. A ghost with unlimited resources and absolutely nothing left to lose. Outside his window, the city lights twinkled like stars. Somewhere out there, Chelsea and Base were probably settling down for the night, feeling secure in their new life together. They had no idea that their world was about to collapse around them. Marcus smiled in the darkness and continued planning their destruction. Chapter 6. The Trap. 2 weeks after the accident, Marcus was discharged from the hospital. His leg was in a walking cast, his ribs were still tender, but he was mobile enough for what came next. Agent Kinney had arranged for him to use a safe house, a modest apartment across town that bore no connection to his former life. But Marcus had other plans. I need to go back to the apartment, he told Kinney as they drove through the city. That's not advisable. Your family cleaned it out, and it's possible they're monitoring the location. That's exactly why I need to go back. The apartment Marcus had called home for 3 years was indeed empty. Chelsea and Base had been thorough, not just taking furniture and personal items, but stripping the place of anything that might have had value. They'd even taken the television and kitchen appliances. But they'd missed what Marcus was really looking for. In the bedroom closet, behind a panel that looked like part of the wall, Marcus retrieved a small device about the size of a smartphone. It was a military-grade communication system, encrypted and untraceable, connected to Phantom Solutions' global network. "I've been reporting to Phantom for 3 years," he told Kenny. "Monthly status updates, maintaining my cover identity in case they needed to extract me quickly. They knew where you were the entire time. They knew everything. Who I married, where I worked, every detail of Marcus Richmond's life." Marcus powered up the device, and within seconds, it was connecting to secure networks around the globe. "Which means they have detail files on everyone who might have been watching me." The device chimed softly, indicating that Marcus had multiple priority messages waiting. He scrolled through them quickly, his expression growing darker with each one. "What is it?" Kenny asked. "Confirmation of what we suspected. Base wasn't the primary asset. He was just a convenient tool. The real operative has been someone much closer to me." Marcus showed Kenny the screen. Among the messages was a detailed surveillance report, filed just 3 days ago, describing the successful neutralization of Target Lazarus, Phantom Solutions code name for Marcus Richmond. The report was filed by Agent Designation Raven, and it included details that only someone with intimate access to Marcus's life could have known. His daily routines, his emotional attachments, his psychological vulnerabilities. "Someone inside Phantom Solutions has been running an operation against me for almost a year," Marcus said quietly. "Base was just the triggerman. The real enemy is someone I trusted. Do you know who Raven is?" "I have suspicions, but first we're going to confirm them." Marcus began typing commands into the device. "I'm requesting a full operational support package. Surveillance equipment, tactical gear, financial resources. For what purpose?" Base and Chelsea think they've won. They're living in their perfect little suburban dream, convinced that their biggest problem is behind them. They have no idea they're about to become bait in a much larger trap. Within hours, Marcus had transformed the empty apartment into a command center that would have impressed military intelligence professionals. Phantom Solutions had couriered in equipment that officially didn't exist. Surveillance devices smaller than coins, listening devices that could pick up conversations through steel walls, and communication systems that could hack into any electronic device within a 5-mile radius. By evening, Marcus had complete digital surveillance of the base house. He could hear conversations in real time, see through any camera-enabled device in the building, and monitor all electronic communications. What he discovered was both satisfying and infuriating. Chelsea and Base were already fighting. "Can't keep spending money like this, Dan. Where's it all coming from?" "I told you, it's bonus payments from the construction project. Big companies pay well for discretion." "What kind of discretion requires $75,000? "The kind that bought us this house, bought your kids new schools, bought you that jewelry you're wearing. Don't ask questions about things that benefit you." Marcus watched through the house's security cameras as Chelsea paced the living room, clearly agitated. The mysterious gifts he'd been sending were having their intended effect, creating suspicion and paranoia. "And what about these deliveries? The wine, the electronics, the weird thank you notes. Probably just corporate gifts. Companies do that. Companies don't send bottles of wine that cost $500 each, Dan. Someone knows what you did." Base's face went pale. "Keep your voice down. The kids might hear." "The kids are asking questions too. Emma wants to know why we haven't heard anything from the hospital about Marcus. Jake keeps asking when we're going to visit his father. Tell them he's still unconscious." "For 3 weeks? Dan, what if he wakes up? What if he remembers what happened?" Marcus leaned forward, interested in Base's response. "He's not going to wake up," Base said quietly. "The people I work with, they're thorough. Marcus Richmond's accident was just the beginning." Chelsea stopped pacing. "What do you mean, just the beginning? I mean, if he does wake up, if he becomes a problem, it'll be handled permanently." The room was silent for several long moments. Then Chelsea asked the question Marcus had been waiting for. "Who are these people, Dan? Who's really paying you?" Base looked around nervously, as if he could sense the invisible eyes watching him. "People you don't want to meet. People who could make us disappear if we become inconvenient." "You're scaring me." "Good. You should be scared. We took their money, we did their job, and now we keep our mouths shut and enjoy the benefits. That's the deal. And if Marcus wakes up and starts asking questions, then we hope our friends are as efficient at cleanup as they were at setup. Marcus turned off the audio feed and sat back in his chair. Bass had just confessed to conspiracy in an attempted murder, and he confirmed that there were other players involved, people dangerous enough to eliminate witnesses if necessary. More importantly, Bass was terrified, which meant he could be pressured into making mistakes. Marcus opened a new communication channel and began typing instructions to Agent Kenny. Tomorrow, Bass would receive a visit from someone claiming to represent his mysterious employers. Someone who would ask very specific questions about loose ends and security concerns. Someone who would make it clear that Bass's usefulness was approaching its expiration date. As for Chelsea, Marcus had a different plan. She was beginning to suspect that she'd gotten involved in something much more dangerous than a simple affair. It was time to make those suspicions impossible to ignore. He opened his laptop and began composing an email that would be sent from an anonymous account. Mrs. Richmond, you may not know me, but I knew your husband, the real Marcus Richmond. You have no idea what you've awakened or who is coming for you. Get out now while you still can. A friend. The email would be sent at 3 a.m., when Chelsea would be alone with her thoughts and her growing paranoia. By morning, she would be asking Bass questions he couldn't answer without revealing the full scope of his involvement. And when people started demanding answers they couldn't give, they made fatal mistakes. Marcus smiled as he scheduled the email and began planning the next phase of his operation. Bass and Chelsea thought they were living in a romance novel. The desperate man and the unhappy wife finding love and a better life together. They had no idea they were actually characters in a horror story. And the monster was just getting started. Chapter 7. The Pressure Cooker. At 3:47 a.m., Chelsea Richmond jolted awake to the sound of her phone buzzing. The anonymous email had arrived exactly as Marcus had planned, and through the house's hacked security cameras, he watched her reaction in real time. She read the message 3 times, her face growing paler with each reading. Then she did exactly what Marcus had predicted. She woke up Bass. Dan, wake up. We have a problem. Bass groggily read the email, and Marcus watched satisfaction as the man's face went through a range of emotions. Confusion, fear, and finally anger. This is probably just some crank who read about your husband's accident in the newspaper, Bass said, but his voice lacked conviction. How would a newspaper reader know there was a real Marcus Richmond? How would they have my email address? I don't know, but Dan, what aren't you telling me? What did you really do? Marcus had positioned this moment perfectly. Chelsea was already suspicious from the expensive gifts and cryptic messages. The mysterious visitor from a few days ago had shaken Bass's confidence. Now, with an anonymous warning arriving in the middle of the night, the pressure was becoming unbearable. I told you everything you need to know, Bass said, but he was sweating despite the cool night air. No, you didn't. You told me Marcus was a security guard who couldn't provide for his family. You told me we'd be helping him by leaving, giving him a chance to start over. But this email... Chelsea held up her phone. This email talks about the real Marcus Richmond. Who is the real Marcus Richmond, Dan? Through the surveillance feed, Marcus could see Bass's internal struggle. The man clearly knew more than he'd told Chelsea, but revealing the truth would expose his own involvement in something much darker than a simple affair. Look, maybe your husband wasn't exactly what he seemed, Bass said finally. Maybe he had secrets, debts, problems you didn't know about. That doesn't change anything for us. It changes everything. Chelsea's voice was rising. If Marcus is dangerous, if he has enemies, then we're in danger too. The kids are in danger. Chelsea, calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. You said this would be simple. You said we'd take the kids and start over, and Marcus would eventually understand and move on. But this... She waved the phone again. This sounds like we poked a hornet's nest. Marcus decided it was time to escalate the pressure. He activated a pre-programmed sequence that would cause several things to happen simultaneously. First, Bass's phone began receiving text messages from unknown numbers. Payment overdue. Need to discuss terms. Meet tomorrow. Usual place. Boss wants to see you. Problem with Richmond situation. Cleanup crew on standby. Confirm status. Second, The house's smart home system began malfunctioning. Lights flickered, the security system armed and disarmed randomly, and the temperature controls started cycling erratically. Third, a black sedan with tinted windows pulled up across the street and parked under a streetlight where it would be clearly visible from the house. The effect was immediate and devastating. Base's phone buzzed continuously with incoming messages. Each one made him more agitated, more desperate. Chelsea watched him read the messages, and Marcus could see the exact moment when she realized that her boyfriend was involved in something truly dangerous. Dan, what are those messages? Who want to see you? What cleanup crew? I can't. These aren't supposed to be happening now. Weren't supposed to be happening. Base was spiraling. The psychological pressure Marcus had been building for weeks was finally breaking him down. There were supposed to be safeguards. I was told if I did my part, if I kept quiet, everything would be handled cleanly. Handled how? Dan, what did you do? Before Base could answer, Chelsea noticed the sedan outside. There's a car out there. It's been sitting there for 10 minutes. Base looked out the window and went completely white. Oh God, they're here. Who's here? Dan, who's here? The people I work for. The ones who paid me to... He couldn't finish the sentence. Paid you to what? Marcus could see that Base was on the verge of a complete breakdown. The man was cornered, facing pressure from multiple directions, and his natural cowardice was overwhelming his ability to think clearly. I wasn't supposed to hurt him, Base said quietly. I was just supposed to provide information. His routines, his habits, when he would be vulnerable. Chelsea stared at him in horror. You set up Marcus's accident. I needed the money. These people, they don't take no for an answer. They said they just wanted to neutralize him temporarily, get him out of the way, so we could be together. Neutralize him? Dan, you tried to have my husband killed. I thought it would just put him in the hospital for a while. Give us time to disappear with the kids. But now, these messages. Base was shaking. I think they're planning to finish the job. Chelsea backed away from him, her face a mask of revulsion and terror. You're a monster. You made me part of a murder conspiracy. Chelsea, please, we can fix this. Fix it? How do you fix attempted murder? How do you fix betraying the father of my children? Through the surveillance feed, Marcus watched his wife, his ex-wife, finally understand the full scope of what she'd gotten involved in. The comfortable suburban dream was collapsing into a nightmare of conspiracy and violence. And Marcus wasn't done yet. He activated the final phase of the evening's psychological warfare. The black sedan's driver got out and began walking toward the house, moving with the purposeful stride of someone conducting official business. Inside the house, Base saw the approaching figure and panicked completely. We have to run. Right now. Pack whatever you can carry, and we leave through the back door. I'm not going anywhere with you. Chelsea shouted. You lied to me about everything. If you stay here, you're dead. These people don't leave witnesses. Then maybe I should call the police. The police can't protect you from these people. No one can. Marcus watched through the cameras as his carefully orchestrated psychological operation reached its crescendo. Chelsea and Base were turning on each other, fear and paranoia destroying whatever bond they'd thought they had. The approaching figure, actually Agent McMahon in disguise, knocked authoritatively on the front door. Base grabbed Chelsea's arm. Back door. Now, leave the kids. We'll come back for them later. I'm not leaving my children. They're safer here than with us right now. It was the perfect moment for Marcus to reveal himself. He activated the house's intercom system and spoke directly to the two people who had betrayed him. Hello, Chelsea. Hello, Dan. Both of them froze, looking around wildly for the source of the voice. You're probably wondering how I can be talking to you right now, considering you left me unconscious in a hospital bed 3 weeks ago. Marcus. Chelsea's voice was barely a whisper. Surprise. I've been awake the whole time. I heard every word you said in that hospital room. I watched you pack up my life and move in with your boyfriend. I listened to you tell our children that their father was a useless dreamer. Base was hyperventilating. This isn't possible. You're supposed to be dead? Is that what your employers promised you, Dan? That Marcus Richmond would have a convenient accident and never wake up to cause problems? Marcus, please, Chelsea said, tears streaming down her face. I can explain. You can explain how you sold out your husband and children for a better lifestyle. You can explain how you helped a stranger target me for assassination. I'm fascinated to hear this explanation. The figure at the front door knocked again, more insistently. Oh, and Dan, that's not one of your mysterious employers at the door. That's an FBI agent. You see, attempting to murder a federal operative is a very serious crime, especially when that operative has been awake and recording everything for weeks. Bass collapsed into a chair, the fight going out of him completely. Marcus, Chelsea said desperately, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know Dan was involved in anything like this. I thought we were just leaving you for a better life. You thought you were abandoning an unconscious man who might never wake up. You thought you were stealing from someone who couldn't stop you. You thought a lot of things, Chelsea, but you never thought about the consequences. What do you want? She whispered. Marcus smiled, though they couldn't see him. I want you to understand that this is just the beginning. Everything you thought you'd gained, I'm going to take it away. Everyone you thought you could trust, they're going to betray you the same way you betrayed me. And when you have nothing left, when you're completely alone and broken, I want you to remember that this all started because you chose greed over love. The knocking at the door had stopped. Marcus knew that McMahon was positioning himself to enter the house if necessary. The FBI is going to arrest Dan for conspiracy and attempted murder. You're going to lose this house, this lifestyle, everything you thought you'd won. And our children. Marcus's voice grew cold. Our children are going to learn exactly what kind of people their mother chose over their father. Marcus, please. My name isn't Marcus. Chelsea. Marcus Richmond was a cover identity, a role I played for 3 years because I thought I'd found something worth protecting. But Marcus Richmond is dead. You killed him in that hospital room. Then who are you? I'm someone you should have never crossed. I'm someone who doesn't forgive. And I'm someone who always collects his debts. The house fell silent except for Chelsea's quiet sobbing. Marcus ended the transmission and leaned back in his chair. Phase 3 was complete. Bass would be arrested within the next few minutes, and Chelsea would spend the rest of the night understanding that her comfortable new life had been built on a foundation of lies and violence. But this was still just the beginning. Marcus had much bigger plans for both of them, and for whoever had been pulling their strings. Chapter 8, The Reckoning. Agent McMahon entered the Bass house with backup, finding Chelsea Richmond sobbing on the living room floor and Dan Bass catatonic in an armchair, staring at nothing. Neither of them resisted arrest. Bass because he'd finally understood the scope of what he'd gotten involved in, and Chelsea because she was in shock. Marcus watched the arrest through his surveillance feed with cold satisfaction. But the real prize wasn't Bass or even Chelsea. It was the information Bass would provide once he understood his situation. 2 hours later, Marcus was in a federal holding facility, sitting across from Dan Bass in an interrogation room. Bass looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past few hours. His hands shook as he reached for the coffee Agent Kenny had provided. Hello, Dan, Marcus said quietly. Bass couldn't meet his eyes. I thought you were dead. A lot of people seem to have thought that. I'm curious about who told you that would be the case. I can't. They'll kill me. Marcus leaned forward slightly. Dan, look at me. Reluctantly, Bass raised his eyes. The people who hired you, they were planning to kill you anyway. You were always a loose end, always a liability. The only reason you're still breathing is because you're in federal custody. You don't understand. These people, they have reach. They have connections. So do I. The difference is my connections want to keep me alive. Yours want you dead. Marcus opened a folder and spread several photographs across the table. Do you know what these are? Bass looked at the photos and went pale. They showed him meeting with various people over the past months. People whose faces had been digitally enhanced to show their true identities. We know about every contact you've had with your handlers, Marcus continued. We know about every payment, every instruction, every dead drop. What we don't know is who's at the top of the food chain. I never met anyone important, just middle management types. But someone gave the orders. Someone wanted Marcus Richmond neutralized specifically. This wasn't random. This was targeted. Bass was sweating heavily now. All I know is that someone was willing to pay a lot of money to have you taken out of the picture. They said you were dangerous, that you were a threat to national security. And you believe them? I needed the money. My debts, my ex-wife, the child support. I was drowning. When they offered to clear everything and pay me on top of it, I didn't ask too many questions. Marcus studied Base's face, reading the micro-expressions that revealed truth from deception. The man was telling the truth about his limited knowledge, but there was something else. What aren't you telling me, Dan? There was something they said about you, about your real identity. What about it? They said Marcus Richmond wasn't your real name. They said you were someone important, someone with access to sensitive information. They made it sound like you were a traitor. Marcus felt a cold realization settling over him. This wasn't just about eliminating an inconvenient operative. Someone had marked him as a security risk, possibly a double agent. Did they mention Phantom Solutions? Base's eyes widened. How do you know that name? Answer the question. They said you were a rogue agent from something called Phantom Solutions. They said you'd gone native, compromised your mission by getting too attached to your cover identity. The pieces were falling into place. Someone within Phantom Solutions had decided that Marcus Richmond had become a liability. Not because he'd blown his cover, but because he'd chosen to make his cover identity real. Who was your primary contact? A woman. Mid-40s, professional-looking. She said to call her Raven. Marcus's blood turned to ice. Agent Dale, Kinney had been using the code name Raven in her Phantom Solutions communications. The same Agent Kinney who had authorized his reinstatement, who had given him access to resources, who knew every detail of his current operation. Describe her. About 5'8", gray hair, always wore dark suits. Had a scar on her left hand, like from a burn. It was definitely Kinney, which meant that everything since his accident had been orchestrated. Not just Base's betrayal, but his own reinstatement. Kinney had been playing both sides, using him to clean up the loose ends of her own operation. Dan, I need you to listen very carefully. The woman who hired you is also the FBI agent who's been running this investigation. She's been playing all of us. Base stared at him in confusion. That's impossible. She arranged your payments, then arranged your arrest. She's going to eliminate everyone who can connect her to this operation, starting with you. But I'm in federal custody. Federal custody run by our people. You think that makes you safe? Marcus stood up and walked to the door. Agent McMahon? McMahon entered the room. Yes. Where is Agent Kinney right now? She said she was heading back to the field office to process the evidence. And where's my wife being held? Same facility. Kinney is conducting her interview personally. Marcus felt the familiar cold focus of an operator in immediate danger. Kinney was consolidating her assets, preparing to eliminate the witnesses. Chelsea might be a lying, betraying opportunist, but she was still the mother of his children. And despite everything, Marcus wasn't ready to let Kinney murder her. Eric, I need you to listen very carefully. Agent Kinney is the source of this operation. She's been running both sides from the beginning. McMahon's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon. That's a serious accusation. Check the timeline. When did Kinney first make contact with Phantom Solutions about reactivating me? I guarantee it was within hours of my accident, before any biometric alerts would have triggered naturally. Marcus could see McMahon processing this information, his training warring with his loyalty to his partner. She knew about my accident before the official reports were filed. Marcus continued. She had agents ready to respond immediately. She already had a cover story prepared about biometric database flags. Even if that's true, it's true. And right now, she's probably eliminating the last witnesses to her operation, starting with my wife. McMahon was quiet for a long moment, then spoke into his radio. Control, I need the location of Agent Kinney and prisoner Chelsea Richmond. The response crackled back. Agent Kinney signed out prisoner Richmond 20 minutes ago for transport to secondary facility. Which secondary facility? No secondary facility logged. Agent Kinney said she was handling transport personally. Marcus and McMahon looked at each other across the interrogation table. She's going to kill her, Base said quietly, just like she's going to kill me. Marcus was already moving. Eric, how fast can you get me out of here? You're not going anywhere. You're a material witness. I'm the only person who can stop Kenny before she completes her cleanup operation. And if you don't help me, you're going to be explaining to a congressional oversight committee how you let a rogue agent murder federal witnesses. McMahon was quiet for another moment, then made his decision. What do you need? My tactical gear from the safe house. Transportation, and a way to track Kenny's vehicle. That's way outside protocol. Agent McMahon, Marcus said quietly, I've been playing by the rules for 3 years. Following protocol, trusting the system, and look where it got me. Marcus moved to the window and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Agent Dale Kenny was preparing to murder his wife to cover up her own crimes. The ghost was done playing by anyone's rules but his own. Give me my gear, Marcus said. It's time to end this. Chapter 9, Ghost Protocol. Agent McMahon broke every protocol in the book, getting Marcus equipped and mobile. Within 40 minutes, Marcus was in full tactical gear, tracking Agent Kenny's vehicle through the city using GPS coordinates McMahon had acquired through questionable means. The signal led to an abandoned warehouse in the industrial district, exactly the kind of location someone would choose for eliminating witnesses. Backup is 20 minutes out, McMahon said through Marcus's earpiece as they approached the warehouse in separate vehicles. 20 minutes is too long, Marcus replied, studying the building through night vision binoculars. I count 2 vehicles, Kenny's sedan and a black SUV. At least 3 people inside, possibly more. Marcus, wait for backup. This is too dangerous to go in alone. Agent McMahon, with all due respect, you're talking to someone who spent 15 years eliminating people who were much better armed and trained than Dale Kenny. Marcus checked his weapons, a suppressed pistol, tactical knife, and various non-lethal options. He was no longer thinking like Marcus Richmond, the security guard of Family Man. He was operating purely as the Weapon Phantom Solutions had trained him to be. I'm going in. Maintain radio silence unless I request assistance. Marcus approached the warehouse using techniques he'd perfected in dozens of similar operations. The building had multiple entry points, but only one that wouldn't trigger immediate detection, a maintenance hatch on the roof that connected to the building's ventilation system. Within minutes, Marcus was inside the warehouse, moving silently through the ductwork until he could observe the main floor. The scene below confirmed his worst fears. Agent Dale Kenny stood over Chelsea, who was bound to a chair in the center of the warehouse floor. 2 other operatives flanked the area, professionals based on their positioning and equipment. They weren't FBI agents. They were private contractors, probably from the same organization that had originally hired Base. Mrs. Richmond, Kenny was saying, I want you to understand that this isn't personal. You're simply a loose end that needs to be tied up. Chelsea's face was streaked with tears, but her voice was steady. My children are going to ask questions. People will notice I'm missing. Your children think you ran away with your boyfriend. As far as anyone knows, Chelsea Richmond disappeared with Dan Base when they realized their crime had been discovered. What crime? I didn't know Dan was involved in anything illegal. Conspiracy to commit murder, Mrs. Richmond. Accessory to attempted assassination of a federal operative. Whether you knew the details or not, you participated willingly. Marcus positioned himself above the group, calculating angles and distances. 3 targets, all armed, 1 civilian to protect. He'd handled worse odds, but never with such personal stakes. The beautiful irony, Kenny continued, is that your husband probably thinks I'm trying to save you right now. He has no idea that I've been orchestrating this entire operation from the beginning. Why? Chelsea asked. Why target Marcus? What did he do? He went soft. He chose sentiment over duty. Do you know what your husband really is, Mrs. Richmond? He's a killer, a professional assassin who's eliminated more than 30 people in the service of interests you couldn't comprehend. Marcus felt no emotion at hearing his true nature revealed to Chelsea. That part of his life had been sealed away when he'd chosen to become a real husband and father. But then he made the mistake of falling in love with his cover identity, Kenny went on. He chose you and your children over his duty to his country. That made him a security risk. So you tried to have him killed. I tried to have Marcus Richmond eliminated so that the operative could be extracted and reassigned. But your husband refused extraction 3 years ago. He wanted to play house instead of serving his purpose. Marcus had heard enough. He dropped silently from the ventilation system, landing behind one of the contractors. Before the man could react, Marcus had his knife across the operative's throat. "Nobody moves," Marcus said quietly. The second contractor spun toward him, weapon raised, but Marcus was already moving. The knife left his hand in a perfect arc, burying itself in the contractor's shoulder and spinning him around. Marcus's suppressed pistol was out and aimed at Kenny before the wounded man hit the ground. "Hello, Dale." Kenny smiled, apparently unconcerned by the weapon pointed at her head. "Agent Richmond, or should I say, Operator Lazarus? You can call me the last person you'll ever see." Dramatic, but not accurate. Kenny nodded slightly, and Marcus heard the distinctive sound of multiple weapons being cocked behind him. "You didn't think I'd come here with just 2 contractors, did you? There are 6 more positioned throughout this warehouse. All of them have clear shots at your wife." Marcus didn't turn around. His training had taught him to assess threats without losing focus on primary targets. "Even if that's true, you'll still be dead before they can fire. And then they'll kill your wife. Is that really the outcome you want?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, running scenarios. Then he smiled. "Dale, you made the same mistake everyone else has made in the past month. Which is, you assumed I still cared about Chelsea Richmond." The confusion on Kenny's face was genuine. "Of course you care. You came here to save her. I came here to eliminate you. Chelsea is just incidental." Marcus's tone was utterly cold, completely without emotion. "You see, when my wife abandoned me in that hospital bed, when she told our children I was a useless dreamer, when she stole everything I'd built and ran off with her boyfriend, she stopped being someone I loved." Chelsea's eyes widened in horror as she realized what Marcus was saying. She became just another target, another loose end, another problem to be solved. "You're bluffing," Kenny said, but there was uncertainty in her voice now. "Am I? 3 weeks ago, maybe. But the Marcus Richmond who would have died to save his family died in that hospital room. What you're facing now is exactly what Phantom Solutions trained me to be, a weapon without conscience or mercy." Marcus shifted his aim slightly, pointing his weapon at Chelsea instead of Kenny. "So here's what's going to happen, Dale. You're going to call off your contractors and surrender, or I'm going to kill my wife myself, eliminating your leverage and leaving me free to hunt down every single person involved in this operation." "Marcus, no!" Chelsea screamed. "Please, I'm sorry. I didn't know." "You knew enough," Marcus said without looking at her. "You knew you were betraying someone who loved you. You knew you were abandoning someone who was helpless. You knew you were choosing greed over loyalty." He turned back to Kenny. "Your choice, Dale. Surrender, or watch me remove your advantage and then come for you." Kenny stared at him for a long moment, trying to read whether he was bluffing. What she saw in his eyes made her decision for her. "Stand down," she called to her hidden operatives. "All units, stand down." "Good choice." Marcus kept his weapon trained on Chelsea as he spoke into his earpiece. "Agent McMahon, I need that backup now. Multiple suspects in custody. Already en route. 2 minutes out." Marcus finally looked directly at Chelsea, seeing his wife, his ex-wife, clearly for the first time since the hospital. "Marcus," she whispered, "please. I know I made mistakes, but you made choices," Marcus corrected. "And choices have consequences. What about Emma and Jake? They're your children too." Emma and Jake chose their side when they went along with abandoning their father. They're old enough to understand loyalty and betrayal. They chose betrayal. They're just kids. They're teenagers who knew exactly what they were doing, just like their mother. The sound of vehicles approaching echoed through the warehouse. Backup was arriving, along with federal prosecutors who would ensure that everyone involved in the conspiracy faced appropriate consequences. Marcus holstered his weapon as armed agents swarmed the warehouse, taking Kenny and her contractors into custody. "What happens now?" Chelsea asked as they placed her in handcuffs. Marcus looked at her one final time, and his expression was completely without warmth or recognition. "Now you disappear. All of you. Bass will spend the rest of his life in federal prison. Kenny will face treason charges. And you," Marcus shrugged, "you'll face charges as an accessory to attempted murder of a federal operative. But the kids, The kids will learn that actions have consequences, that loyalty matters, that some betrayals can never be forgiven. As the agents led Chelsea away, she called back desperately, "Marcus, please. I love you." Marcus didn't respond. He stood in the empty warehouse, surrounded by the aftermath of an operation that had cost him everything he'd thought he wanted. Agent McMahon approached him carefully. "You okay?" "I'm exactly what I've always been," Marcus replied. "I just forgot for a while. What's next for you?" Marcus looked around the warehouse one final time, then walked toward the exit. "Phantom Solutions has offered me a choice. New identity, new assignment, clean slate. Or return to my cover identity and try to rebuild what's left of Marcus Richmond's life. Which are you going to choose?" Marcus stepped out into the night air, breathing deeply for the first time in weeks. Marcus Richmond was a weakness, a liability, a ghost who forgot he was supposed to be dead. He looked up at the stars, barely visible through the city's glow. "I'm going back to being what I do best. A weapon without attachments. A tool without sentiment. A ghost who remembers that the living are just targets waiting to be eliminated." Marcus Richmond had died in a hospital bed 3 weeks ago, killed by the people who were supposed to love him most. What walked away from that warehouse was something much more dangerous. A ghost with nothing left to lose and no reason to show mercy to anyone who crossed him. The living had betrayed him for the last time. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.